Let's get into this episode by talking about why things aren't working. Your marketing is something that should be tailor made to exactly what you need to accomplish within your organization. And I want to break down a few reasons why we see a lot of people who are wasting money on their advertising, why it's a pain point, and how to fix it. Some steps to get into it. My name is Chris Milton. I am the CEO of 323 Media and the person here behind Tactics of Marketing with our team, sharing more about marketing and how you can grow your business. We create content, we do everything that we can to help you grow, but the most important part is fit, doing the right thing for you to grow your business, your personal brand, and to get your KPIs hit so you can get to your goals faster. So let's touch on this topic for the first episode of Tactics Marketing, which is why isn't my marketing working? And as much as I want to be a consultant and spend a ton of time and helping people dissect this, it is actually pretty straightforward to figure out. So, the number one thing that I feel happens within organizations is there's three or four components that aren't talking to each other. And that's the marketing department, the sales team, the leadership, and the service team. And the reason that those four things make sense is that those things are all client or customer facing. But often, and unfortunately, it's too often, they're each doing things differently. So the things that customer service is listening to post sale of how there's feedback, interaction, questions, answers, what's working well, what's working incorrectly, what can be improved, don't make it back to salespeople often enough. And if it does, it is an automatic win that you start seeing sales teams start understanding more and connecting more and closing more deals. But then there's a campaign that's running, there's advertising that's happening, there's content that's being made, and it doesn't check off those same boxes. And we've even had things where we had one client that it was unbelievable how the sales team came into a Monday meeting with the ad in hand that was being run in the newspaper saying, I had to honor this promo and you guys didn't even tell me it was happening. And it's one of those things where it sucks. Like it really is a real blemish on your organization that you had somebody that was more knowledgeable than your team about what your offer was. And I'm sure a lot of these mistakes happen and they're just minor things that get overlooked on a regular basis. It's okay. We're all busy within our day to day. But the reason that it's not just those three things and it also includes leadership is that that leadership team needs to be able to stitch all of these things together. And by looking at it at a really high level, sure, it comes down to the mission and the vision of the organization, where you're going, but it also comes down to the tactical approach of what's being done when. Not everybody has a Black Friday sale, so you can't assume that there's a Black Friday deal. Not everybody has some sort of offer in January that you're going to be doing as a new year, new you, new thing to be able to market and push and have a very successful kickoff start to your calendar year. And the reason that that is true is because all of your organizations run differently. A landscaper isn't going to be out in January cutting grass in most climates in North America. They're going to be doing something different, or maybe they're just operating seasonally. But for fitness and for trainers and for health and nutrition, January is the biggest time of year because everyone's trying to lose weight. It's number two or number three goal that people make as their New Year's resolutions. So that is one part of the year is a good example that if you're running your gym as a trainer, you can't be talking to your landscaper friend about how to be doing advertising and marketing and sales in January because you're going to have totally different answers, right? And so the leadership's opportunity is to be able to get their own formula down pat by touching in with each of those organizations' functional parts with sales and marketing and service and being able to put that all together to say, hey, from a uniform perspective, this is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to do it. And this is how we're going to do it. And this is where we're going. And I feel like that's something that is too often overlooked. So let's take a step back if it's not obvious enough yet as to why marketing isn't working. And that part of it being broken is part of it. If you have a specific offer that you're using to get somebody to opt in from your Facebook ads and the sales team doesn't really know how to handle that, then obviously it's going to break. But let's look at it from a different perspective. Let's say that all of those things are addressed and that you have everyone on the same page of where you are in the organization, where you're headed. The next part of it is actually having a tactical advantage over your competition. There is so much information that is out there just by you Googling things that your customers would themselves. And you can see from a public perspective, well, where do we stand? Who's actually, okay, let's cut that part. There's so much you can gain from a tactical advantage just by Googling like you're one of your customers. Knowing what they're seeing by who's in the marketplace, what offers are there, who's advertising, where are they actually focusing on, what products or services are they leading with, what are they trying to promote. These are all really interesting pieces of information that unfortunately it gets overlooked a lot, like way too much. When we ask people to look up, what are your customers typically looking at when we're trying to figure out their SEO, most people default to one thing, and that's they're looking for us. And let's be honest, they're not. They're probably not. Even with companies who have a high amount of branded traffic, which means they're looking for your company name or your product name, it is still not 100% of the searches that will convert into sales. It means that you have to be able to think through the customer of what problem they have, how you can solve it with your product or service, and be able to really make a good case in a very quick manner to get them to be interested in you rather than your competition. And part of that is positioning, which obviously comes down to your tactics. Part of that is messaging so that you can actually relate to them, because maybe they want to be dealing with you because you have way more casual language. Maybe they want to be dealing with you because you're super formal. We look at this. I love to look at this from how lawyers advertise, because this is a good example of how the same service could be available with many different flavors. You'll have one that is a billboard, that is a family organization that has many people working in the same law firm, and their message is something about like, come see us because you can trust us. You have other people that are advertising based on gloom and fear and trying to scare you into something that you need, which is, are you hurt? Come talk to us. We'll get you the most. And it's like, great. Is that fear mongering? Is it based on cost? Is it trying to get you to hook in because you want money and you're greedy? I don't know. I don't even know if it works. But the other part of it is when there's people who have, some weird shtick that they're working on in order to make their own brand and be unique. And I think a good example of this is if anybody can relate to Saul Goodman from Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, that was his thing. He was corny. He was really odd. He was on purpose being a character that people could relate to. And then you've got another category that's just like super slick, super elitist. And all of those people have the same license to operate. They all have the same background in terms of what their schooling is like in order to do that and to operate. They're technically offering the same service, but they're doing so in a very different flavor, and they're doing it with different positioning. You can do that too. You don't have to appeal to everyone, nor will you appeal to anyone if you're overly bland and overly stuck in a way of feeling like you're generic. Be proud of what your identity is and what your messaging can be and what your character is, whether it's a representation of your product, whether it's a representation of your target market or your staff. The point is, when you put something out there, it's going to be attractive to somebody. Making it attractive to the right people is really ideal. And making sure that those people are the ones that are going to be happy with your product or service is where you start getting into the place of saying, my targeting is really on point. I'm getting my ideal customers. Now, to build that ideal customer, let's start looking at it and saying, hey, who is this person? And I'm thinking, if you were to take out a piece of paper and write it down, your ideal customer, you should easily be able to get to 10 points about that person or that company. And you could probably get to 20 if you really tried. So think about it. You've got name, you've got location. Oh, what is going on? Now we can get back to it. So if you try really hard, or maybe not even that hard, on a blank piece of paper and get to 10 points about that person or that company, it's easy. It actually flies along really fast. You know, what's their name? Where do they live? What do they do? How old are they? Do you know what kind of car they drive? What do they have as interest? Name one, two, three. What type of employment do they have currently? Are they a business owner? Are they a leader of a corporation? Are they a manager? What type of education background do they have? All of those things are really straightforward, but the point is it helps you talk to them. Sure, down the road, it'll help you with your advertising to create your target market of who you want to be able to target with your ads. But in this case, it's just about being able to have the messaging that will relate to that person. If you know that you have somebody who is an avid sports fan and is super into performance and used to be an athlete in school, in your messaging, some of the puns that you could put in there that are all related to performance and giving your best and almost sounding like you're a coach on the field, they're going to relate to that. They're going to feel at home right away. But if you have somebody that never wanted to exercise or work out in their life and they start reading that, they're going to be turned off. Now, it works well if that former athlete is your target market, but it works really poorly if they're not. And so that's some of the messaging that you want to be able to create. The reason that I'm going through this in this order is because these are the ways that I feel save money. And the reason that I say that it saves money is because too often we'll see clients that will start deploying thousands of dollars on Facebook ads, thousands of dollars on Google ads. And what happens is they'll get the clicks, they'll get people coming to their website, and then they fall off a cliff. Like, we're talking great, your performance is awesome. Facebook is saying, hey, look at this. You had this many people click through. Guess how many sales you got? None. Guess how many people you had register for your newsletter? None. This isn't good because it means that they got to the other side of that ad and what they saw they didn't like. And so by making sure that people that are being invited to see more about your company, more about your product, more about your service are going to like it there, you have to make sure that that's an environment and messaging that they want to be around and that is going to relate to them. And then you start opening up that door to pull more people closer. Okay. So by knowing who it is, by knowing why you're going to speak to them, you can create that environment where you're ready to start advertising. Being ready to start advertising is assuming that your website can convert, whether that's making a sale online, somebody contacting you, someone booking an appointment. Those things can happen. And those things are happening because it's way easier to have one, two, three, or four leads that have already come in through your website or one of your landing pages and then dial that up instead of painfully trying to get your first conversion, because it feels like you don't have as much certainty that it's going to work. Right? So make that first conversion easy, whether that's an email opt-in. I think lead magnets work well for most businesses, something you can show for free, whether it's a demonstration, whether it's a tool that somebody can use. It creates that open form of communication that allows you to then push the conversation forward. So that's where we've covered already. We've covered number one, making sure that all the departments involved with customer facing activities are on the same page in terms of where you're going, what you're doing. You've figured out what you're going to be targeting, who you're going to be targeting, what you're going to be talking to them about. And number 2.5 is being able to make sure that your website is going to be something that converts. Now, part 3 is actually understanding what tactics you're going to deploy. So in that second step, we learned a lot about who is going to be your ideal customer. Now you get to reverse engineer your ads. So instead of looking at it and saying, I think I want to do YouTube ads, I think I want to start promoting things on Pinterest. Well, before you do that, you can actually look at all of the data that they have on their users and compare and say, is my ideal customer actually on that platform? And if they are they the most common type of user that's on that platform? And the reason for this is the stickiness of somebody on each of those platforms is important because it means that that tool is built for them. So that platform will have a better idea of how to get in touch with them. This means that your advertising is going to perform better. It means your analytics are going to be more in line with understanding what you can do. And the recommendations from the platform on how you're supposed to improve your ads are actually going to be way more relevant because they'll have more campaigns that have worked for your target audience before. It's not something that is new to them, right? So if you were saying that you needed to try something new, are you going to be good at it the first time, or are you going to have some troubles and have a bit of a learning curve? I think it's going to be the learning curve. And that's definitely not what you want to have happen when you're spending your dollars that are there. Now, within specific platforms, I think it's also important to understand where there is content or pockets of information that can be relatable to you. So in Facebook, this is specific Facebook groups and seeing if there is a community that is there already that is active and vibrant that your target market is going to be a part of. And it is totally okay for that to be something that is personal, even though you're advertising for business. So if you were to say, oh, I know that our ideal customer builds his own cars on the weekends and he's super big into hot rods. Great. Well, is there a hot rod community that's local to your ideal customer that he's going to be a part of? Because that means he's probably going to be on the Facebook platform for a pretty long time. So that's really important. The second part of it is knowing if there isn't a community aspect, what type of content is there? So YouTube's a great example of this. And Instagram is a good example of this. What profiles are growing? What are the biggest profiles? What is it within your area and scope of your target market that would keep them attracted? And in a lot of these platforms that are so incredibly big, there's always going to be something. But it's up to you to really understand and say, is it happening here or not? Is this something that is relevant? Are my people here? Hello, if I knock on the door, is someone going to answer that actually is going to be a good fit for me or not? And it's okay to say no, they're not there. So that's part of the targeting when you're looking at your people and who you want to know. These ads pretty well work the best for the most part, unless you have a specific product or a specific service that has very broad characteristics. And this is where we get into things like home services or getting into like dentists or doctors. You have a specific need, and it's very hard to identify if someone has a cavity or if somebody needs their lawn replaced. Sure, there's criteria that are there. Most of it is geographic because it's an area that you can service, but it's also extremely intent based. And this is where content works really well and your AdWords work really well within Google search. And that's because the intent of them searching for something layered on with where they are means that there's a connection and a fit, like a matchmaker for who they're looking for, and that being you. All of the work that you did in step two to be able to speak to that person is going to make sure that you get a good customer. But it's also about what that person is wanting to happen. And a lot of times, this can also be something that you can use negative keywords against. So, for example, if you're somebody who is really busy and is only booking a week out, you're probably going to want to bid against the keyword today, right? Can I get my cavity fixed today? What dentist can fix my cavity today? Well, if you can't accept an appointment same day, then that's not something you want to be advertising for. So there's a lot of these little hacks and these little tips that are very common sense that if I sit down with somebody and talk to them like you, this is an easy conversation to have because you're so good at what you do. You know all of these things already. It's about translating those things into the different platforms that you can use to grow. And I feel like that's the opportunity. The opportunity is knowing how you can push these buttons and pull these levers to make sure you're getting the results that you want. Okay. And lastly, let's just wrap this up with saying setting and forgetting is not the way to go. And this is probably the last thing that you want to hear as a busy marketer or a busy business owner. But the reality is, every single day, the internet is shifting. Every single day, the media landscape is changing. And that's not to say that you need to be on top of your ads every day, but it does mean that you need to be able to have some level of consistency that can adapt over time. The way that I look at how often this needs to be changed is back to this is back to what you know about your best customers, but you're relating it in a way that's about their buying cycles. So, how often are they coming to see you? Do they come to see you every 3 months? Great. Then that's the maximum amount of time that we should have between the cycles of you changing your ads. You should be able to have a different message that still relates to them, but gets them back in. And I'm sure in another episode, we'll talk about first impressions versus repeat business and things like that, because that's a fascinating topic, at least for me. But it is something that is really interesting because you want to be able to have that first impression fresh. So if you look at their buying cycles, that'll give you an idea at minimum of how often you should be paying attention to your campaigns and not just leaving them alone. It's not ideal. You should be on top of it more often, but I understand how busy you are. And so the idea is that that should be a minimum. Now, for businesses that are a really high frequency business, then I would say look at your cycles and understand what times of year change different things about why the buying patterns happen. So we mentioned earlier about businesses that have New Year's resolutions and campaigns that match with that. And we also talked about Black Friday. Great. But those things don't work outside of those seasons. And so knowing that the buying habits of somebody in Black Friday are very different from those of somebody in January means you have to change your campaign in December. Over the holidays, good, great. Have it ready, make sure that it's ready to rock and roll. But the point of it is, it needs to be different. You have to be able to talk to the seasons and understand what's happening in someone's mind and what's happening in their day to day. Their buying cycle may change because it's now Valentine's Day or spring break or Easter or another holiday or anything that's happening in the summertime with vacations and kids being off of school. All of those things, as much as it doesn't change your working relationship with them, it changes their mentality towards making these making these purchases because of everything else that's happening around them. And so that's something to keep in mind. I think it is useful to be in the shoes of your customers, especially your best ones, because the things that you can be more relatable about will always help your campaigns succeed more. It'll give more fuel to your sales team, especially if your sales team isn't in your demographic. Being able to remind them, hey, our best customers, they don't have time as much right now to talk on the phone because all of their kids are out of school right now. But we can't let that be a reason that we have a bad July in sales, right? These are different things that you can put in place to be able to have a phenomenal organization that grows. Marketing or not, this is a piece of it, but I hope there's some sound advice there that allows you to really build out your messaging and really build out the way that you can relate to more people, more of your people, more of the people that you want to have as customers and clients. So that by far is a great way to do episode 1, because that is the question that we get asked the most, which is why isn't my marketing working? And it usually falls into one or more of those reasons. So, signing off for the first episode. Hopefully, you enjoyed. If this episode was valuable to you, please leave us a review, share it with your network. We're going to have some of these clips that are floating around. Like those, comment on those, share those. And if you have a question that you want to be featured on a show, we are building out our list to get to 1,000 episodes about tactics of marketing that you can deploy on a regular basis. Send that to us and let us know what you would like to see in upcoming episodes. Go to tacticsofmarketing.com in order to let us know what you want to see in future episodes and to subscribe to our newsletter where you'll get the newest episodes and more. All right, until next time, my name is Chris Milton. Thank you for paying attention. You all deserve better marketing. I hope you go and get it. Talk soon.